Other couples spend nights and days passionately arguing in their homes, but my girlfriend and I were constantly locked in cold wars. Not only that, she often reminds me that she gave me her first time, and because of that, I'm obligated to always comply with her wishes, listen to her every word, or else I'm accused of betraying her love for me. But after yet another silent treatment, I didn't apologize. A friend advised me she just likes to play hard to get. She says one thing but means another. Just go comfort her and it'll be fine. But I was tired. I didn't want to lower my head anymore. Years of moral blackmail, breakup threats, and warnings about having children, I'd heard them all far too many times. So when she threatened to break up with me again, I said, "All right, then let's break up." Hearing my reply, Victoria froze for a moment, clearly caught off guard, but I didn't look at her. I calmly scrolled through my phone and said, "I'll pack my things and move out as soon as possible. Everything we bought together you can keep. As for whether you stay or leave, that's up to you. I won't even ask for the deposit back." In the quiet room, only my voice could be heard. Victoria's expression gradually shifted from indignant to icy. Then she suddenly interrupted me. "What about Tiger? How do we divide him?" Tiger was a stray cat Victoria had picked up near the entrance of our neighborhood. She had begged me to take him in, but in the end, I was the one who cared for him, covering all his expenses. Yet he never warmed up to me. 8 out of 10 times he'd hiss at me from afar, and on several occasions he even scratched my wrist. On the other hand, despite Victoria barely petting him, he would always rub against her affectionately and meow for attention. I replied, "You can keep him." I let out a sigh. As much as I liked him, the stark difference in how he treated us was disheartening. She snapped back, "Sincere." Victoria restrained her emotions as she enunciated each word. "You forgot Valentine's Day and now you're taking it out on me?" I was speechless. Wasn't it Victoria who first mentioned breaking up? Perhaps she'd forgotten, as she often threw the word breakup around because it worked as a threat. I sighed. "I already told you, my flight was delayed and that's why I got back late." Victoria let out a cold scoff. "An excuse. Why couldn't you book an earlier flight?" This business trip had me working non-stop for over 10 hours, compressing my schedule just to catch the earliest flight back that day. But Victoria wouldn't hear it. She'd come up with 100 more reasons to blame me. So I stayed silent, feeling an overwhelming sense of exhaustion. Victoria walked toward the door, paused, and then turned back, her tone cold. "I won't come back until you realize your mistake." I replied, "We've already broken up," but it was as if she didn't hear me. Tilting her head slightly, she carried on as if talking to herself. "I'll give you one more chance. I'm not just mad because you were late." This was the first time she'd articulated her feelings like this. Usually she'd just storm out and slam the door. Though her tone was still condescending, she added, "Think it through, then come find me and apologize." I sat on the couch for a long time before dragging my weary body to clean the living room. I even retrieved the gift I had thrown into the trash earlier. A gift I had meticulously picked out after visiting over 10 stores abroad. But the recipient hadn't even glanced at it, let alone appreciated it. To her, it was as worthless as the mess strewn across the floor. After tidying up the living room, I headed to the bedroom to pack my belongings. This was the apartment we had rented together. Every corner of it bore traces of our shared life. The mugs, blankets, matching dinnerware we had picked out as a couple. But I only packed a few clothes before grabbing my suitcase and heading out. As I reached the door, a blur of yellow dashed out, blocking my path. Tiger sprawled in the middle of the living room, refusing to move, his round eyes fixed intently on me. When Victoria had first brought him home, he had been filthy and underfed, clearly malnourished. But under my care, his fur had become shiny and thick, making him an undeniably charming cat. I crouched down. This time, Tiger acted unusually. He didn't reject my touch. I stroked his head and said, "I'm leaving. She'll take care of you from now on." Tiger probably preferred this outcome. After all, he had always been closer to Victoria, treating me like a distant acquaintance at best. I gently pried his claws from my pant leg. ignoring his meowing protests, and walked out with my suitcase. At the entrance of the apartment complex, my phone rang. It was Victoria's best friend. Her tone was accusatory. "Sincere, what happened this time?" Victoria's furious. "She's at a bar drinking, and no one can stop her. You need to come get her before she wrecks the place." I felt a wave of helplessness. I don't even know why she's mad. She came home today and started throwing a tantrum, smashing things for no reason. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then her friend said, sounding surprised, "You really don't know? She saw you having dinner with another woman and even saw you drop her off at a hotel. Victoria's jealous." I explained, "That was a client. The dinner was strictly business. I gave her a ride because it was raining and she couldn't get a cab. So that was the real reason for Victoria's anger. She had always been like this, getting upset whenever I interacted with another woman. I knew it was because she loved me, which made her prone to jealousy. But now, all I felt was exhaustion. I said, "I can explain everything. I just don't get it." I said softly into the phone, "Why would she rather tell you all everything and not even think to ask me? She always makes me guess what's on her mind." I once asked a buddy what he does when he fights with his girlfriend. He thought for a moment and said, "It depends on who's right and who's wrong. Wait until both cool down and then talk it out." But Victoria isn't like that. She refuses to reason with me. She won't communicate. She keeps everything bottled up and I never know why she's angry. Every single time I have to guess or ask her best friend. I don't understand. Why won't she open up to me? Why would she rather pour her heart out to her friends than come to me for clarity? It wasn't until later that I learned a word, contradictory. Victoria is the most contradictory and overly dramatic woman I've ever met. She's sensitive, unpredictable, and always retreating and avoiding. She tests me with cold words and silence. A friend once warned me, "Girls like that aren't suited for relationships. You'll have to always beg and coax." I didn't believe him. I charged into the relationship full of passion. Now I'm lost. If only one person is always putting in the effort in a relationship, can it truly last? I moved back to my place. We didn't see each other in daily life anymore, but work was a different story. We worked in the same research institute, just in different departments. During a task handoff, I saw a young man greet Victoria. His name was Ethan, a new colleague this year. When Victoria saw me, her eyes lit up for a split second, but I avoided looking at her and calmly handled the work. Her hopeful gaze instantly turned cold. Without a word, she brushed past me, her face indifferent. I overheard Ethan asking a colleague, "What's with the long scar on Miss Victoria's arm?" Someone explained, "You're new, so you wouldn't know. Victoria and Sincere, the guy from the neighboring department, used to be a couple. They were practically a fairy tale pair. The scar is from an earthquake years ago. Sincere broke his leg, and Victoria stayed by his side through it all. She got injured herself because of it. I heard she couldn't become a doctor because of that scar, so she switched careers and eventually joined our institute." Ethan sighed. With a wife like that, what more could a man ask for? I just felt speechless. The others chimed in, talking about how Victoria gave up her dream and applied to the institute with me instead. Everyone thought she was utterly devoted to me and couldn't help expressing their envy. Even our recent Cold War was seen as some kind of romantic gesture. Someone declared, "I bet Sincere will apologize first, as always." A young woman added, "Last time, he bought us all bubble tea. What's it going to be this time? I'm craving cupcakes." Another person objected, "That's unfair. Sincere always apologizes first. If Victoria apologizes this time, then I'll take that bet." I stood in the corner, silently listening to their chatter. But this time, they were wrong. The next moment, I walked over and said, "Victoria and I have broken up. Please don't bring it up again." My words ended the conversation. Everyone exchanged awkward glances and quickly dispersed. The truth is, our relationship was never as perfect as it appeared to others. Countless cold wars and arguments had left us with invisible scars, fragile and on the brink. I wondered, If I stopped trying, stopped fixing things, Victoria, would you notice? Would you try to salvage us? Would you apologize first this time? A whole month passed, and Victoria and I acted like strangers, locked in some unspoken standoff, neither willing to make the first move. Meanwhile, Ethan and Victoria grew closer. They ate together, left work together, and even teamed up during a weekend hiking trip. Ethan seemed hesitant, though. Victoria, I don't think this is a good idea. What about Sincere? Victoria replied coldly, We broke up. He has no say in what I do. She didn't lower her voice so everyone nearby could hear. With a scoff, she added, Besides, he loves having meals with other women. Hiking must be the same for him. Immediately, the way people looked at me changed. I caught snippets of whispers. Sincere had such a great girlfriend and didn't appreciate her. Cheated on her. No wonder she dumped him. When I walked over, the gossiping crowd quickly dispersed. During the hike, Ethan tried helping Victoria up a rocky slope, but lost his footing, and they both tumbled to the ground, sustaining minor injuries. Ethan stood up, full of guilt. It's all my fault. I got you hurt. Now we're going to finish last. But Victoria's voice softened. Of course not. It's my clumsiness that got you hurt. I should be the one apologizing. Besides, we came here to relax, not to compete. I rolled my eyes. I was trailing behind them, taking my time to enjoy the scenery since I didn't want to disrupt anyone else's pairing. But this was what I stumbled upon, this nauseatingly harmonious scene. I even heard someone comment, Victoria really is such a sweet and gentle girl. Victoria was indeed sweet and gentle to everyone except me. I once asked her why she behaved the way she did. Her reasoning was that she had already warned me about her bad temper before we started dating. It was as if this preemptive warning had given her a free pass to treat me however she pleased. She felt entitled to throw tantrums or give me the cold shoulder because, in her mind, I had been forewarned. Take, for example, the so-called earthquake incident. It wasn't even a real earthquake, it was just a drill. Back in college, she was the class president. During one of these drills, everyone rushed outside except her. She came over to help me, even though I had a broken leg and repeatedly told her to leave me alone. No matter how much I protested, she refused to go. She insisted on helping me up despite my injury. Her loyalty during that event became the talk of the campus. Everyone praised her for sticking by me. Some guys even envied me, saying, With a wife like that, what more could a man want? The story sparked debates, even drawing commentary from both men and women. Some women mocked me, saying I was unlucky to have her. Men, on the other hand, argued that such a rare gem of a woman deserved to be cherished. But what they didn't know was that Victoria wasn't exactly being kind to me at that moment. She was scolding me nonstop, saying, Why on earth did you come to class with a broken leg? You've dragged down the entire class. Now we're ranked last because of you. Sincere, you really are useless. She went on and on about how she had already taken care of everything by notifying the administration that I couldn't participate in the drill. But she wasn't willing to listen when I tried to explain. She stubbornly insisted on helping me up, nagging all the while, until I eventually gave in just to make her stop. Later, her best friend told me that Victoria was just worried about me. Apparently, she even went out of her way to learn how to make pork bone soup for me after the incident. Her friend told me, She burned herself a few times while making that soup for you. She's just bad at expressing herself, but she really cares about you. My buddies chimed in too, saying, She's just a bit stubborn, but she genuinely likes you. Don't give up on such a caring, albeit feisty girl. But now, when I see Victoria acting all sweet and gentle around Ethan, I realize something. It's not that she has a bad temper, it's that her bad temper was reserved for me. I could sense her feelings for me through what others told me, but I never truly felt it in her actions. She always directed her frustration at me, scolded me for being useless, for not giving her what she wanted. She shredded a scarf someone gifted me. She smashed a video game console a colleague lent me. I convinced myself each time that she was just jealous or insecure. So even after being pushed away and shut out repeatedly, I kept apologizing, kept trying, kept lowering my pride, hoping to make things work. But affection is a two-way street. In this relationship, I wasn't perfect, but I was exhausted. The line between her stubbornness and her indifference blurred until I could no longer tell the difference, or even care to try. Was she just difficult, or did she not love me at all? So, I stopped. I opted out of our company retreat, telling my boss I wasn't feeling well. When I got home, I packed up the clothes Victoria had left at my place, called for a courier, and sent them to her. After that, I sat on my couch, staring blankly at nothing for a while. Eventually, I picked up my phone and texted her 3 simple words. Let's break up. The last time we fought, I still harbored some naive hope that she might realize her faults, that she might want to sit down and have an honest conversation with me, maybe even apologize. But this time, I was done. I was really breaking up with her. Except I couldn't send the text. I forgot. Victoria had blocked me. She always did this during our arguments. Delete me from all her contacts. I frowned and asked her best friend to pass along the message. Ironically, I used to resent how Victoria always made her friend act as a go-between. Now, I was the one doing the same thing. While messaging her friend, I accidentally clicked on her social media profile. The most recent post was a group photo at the beach. Right in the center of the picture were Victoria and Ethan. He was smiling brightly with his arm casually draped over her shoulder, while she wore a soft, reserved smile. The post had been made a week ago, right in the middle of our silent treatment phase. I stared at that photo for a long time before hitting the like button. Victoria used to tell me she preferred traveling alone because every trip we took together ended in frustration. She'd complain about the photos I took of her, about how I couldn't pick up on her unspoken cues, like what she wanted me to buy for her. So it had been ages since we'd traveled together. Maybe it wasn't about the photos. Maybe she was just tired of me. When someone more successful and promising appeared, she started fighting with me, ignoring me. They say a woman's love is evident when she's cold to others but warm to you. Victoria was the opposite. She was always sweet and gentle to Ethan, but to me she acted aloof, distant, and superior. I guess I was blind. I didn't realize she had long since grown tired of me. I decided to take some time for myself. I booked a vacation and flew to a quiet coastal town. The scenery here was breathtaking, and the food was amazing. While chatting with a sweet old lady who lived here, I asked her if she ever got tired of being in the same place all her life. She chuckled warmly and said, "This is home. It's grown so much over the years, and I'm proud of it. How could I ever grow tired of something I love?" She said she loved her home, and in that moment I understood. Everyone might be able to look at a beautiful view for a long time, but true feelings never grow tiresome. I never expected to receive a call from Victoria on the 3rd day. I didn't even know when she had taken me off her block list. Her tone was still icy as she said, "Tiger's cat food is finished. I don't know which brand to buy." I told her the brand and added, "You can just use the image search like before. You don't need to ask me." Victoria avoided the suggestion and simply replied, "The packaging is already thrown away." She then asked, "What should I do about the cat tree?" Tiger broke it. Speechless, I answered, "Just buy a new one." She continued, "Tiger went downstairs to play just now and got himself all muddy. I said, take him to the pet store for a bath." Victoria kept asking questions and I answered them one by one. Then suddenly there was nothing left to say. After waiting for a while and hearing no follow-up, I said, "All right, I'm hanging up. You can search online for tips on taking care of a cat. Please don't bother asking me again." There was silence on the other end. Just before the call ended, Victoria said softly, "Tiger misses you. Will you come back to see him?" I didn't believe her. Because of the nature of my job, Victoria and I often traveled for work. Every time she came back, Tiger would camp out by the door in anticipation and enthusiastically run up to her, meowing in excitement. But when I returned, Tiger always acted aloof, avoiding me unless I offered him a cat treat. Only then would he reluctantly let me pet him. He never used to miss me. Why would he now? I declined. No need, he's your cat. I have no obligation to see him. After hanging up, I let out a long sigh. I couldn't understand why Victoria had called. Did she really want advice, or was Tiger becoming too much of a hassle for her? Knowing her, it made sense. She had a fleeting enthusiasm for things. Rescuing a stray cat might have satisfied her need to feel altruistic, but taking care of one was probably too much of a burden. I tossed and turned until the early hours of the morning. Picking up my phone, I drafted a text message. If you think Tiger is too much trouble, just give him back to me. I hesitated. I was afraid she really would find him too troublesome and abandon him. In that case, I'd rather take responsibility for him myself. Even if Tiger didn't like me, I would ensure he was well cared for. At 3 a.m., to my surprise, she replied instantly, "Do you want Tiger? Even if it means taking him away?" Before I could respond, another message came through. What about me? But the next second, that message was retracted. I wondered if I had imagined it. After a while, Victoria sent another message. "Send me your address. I'll bring Tiger to you." At the coffee shop, Victoria arrived holding Tiger. She had light makeup on, but it couldn't conceal the dark circles under her eyes. I hadn't expected her to come so quickly. She must have left as soon as she sent the message. The moment Tiger saw me, he wriggled out of her arms. Once set down, he immediately ran over to squat by my feet, meowing and acting unusually affectionate. For once, he treated both Victoria and me the same way. But this time, I simply opened the cat carrier and nudged him inside without petting him. My arm still bore 3 or 4 scars from his scratches, and they hadn't faded. My irritation was real. After taking Tiger, I was ready to leave, but Victoria stopped me. Pressing her lips together, she said, "Someone told me the person you met during your last business trip was just a client. I misunderstood and took it out on you. And about that social media post you liked, it was just a friend accompanying me on a trip to clear my head. We happened to run into Ethan, and that's why we took a group photo." I stopped and listened quietly as Victoria spoke. She probably thought I broke up with her because I misunderstood her relationship with Ethan. But that wasn't the case. Our relationship had already reached its breaking point before Ethan ever entered the picture. Victoria hesitated several times before finally saying, "I'm sorry. It was my fault we fought last time." Her face turned red as she spoke, biting her lip and avoiding eye contact like she was deeply embarrassed. So I asked her, "Victoria, is apologizing to me such a humiliating thing for you?" Why was it so hard for her to apologize? If saying sorry felt like surrendering, then what did that make me? The one who always apologized and tried to make amends. A fool? Victoria's eyes turned red and she stammered, "I thought you knew I was just throwing a tantrum. After that day, I was waiting for you to make up with me. I didn't mean to break up. I just wanted you to coax me." Her voice choked as she continued, "Why is it that when you say we're breaking up, it's final without any mercy? 7 years of love, and you leave so decisively. You want Tiger, but not me. I feel exhausted." I couldn't explain things to Victoria. She thought I said we should break up out of anger because that's how she thought. But some things, when said enough times, become reality. I replied, "The breakup wasn't because of anyone else. It was because of your personality. You always refuse to communicate, refuse to listen, twist the truth, and avoid problems." Victoria clenched her fists, accusing me. "In the end, those are just excuses. The truth is, you didn't love me enough. You wanted to give up on me, on us." She repeated herself slowly and tearfully. "Sincere, you didn't love me enough." I was at a loss. 7 years of chasing, 7 years of effort, and I was left with the accusation that I didn't love her enough. I asked her, "And what about you? Did you ever do anything for love? Make even the slightest change?" I knew her stubbornness, her sensitivity, and her constant insecurity. That's why I always tiptoed around her, carefully maintaining our relationship. I never said the words "let's break up," because I knew with Victoria's pride she'd never back down if I did. That would be the end of us. But she, on the other hand, could say it without hesitation because she knew I would always give in. I was more advanced, providing better opportunities for my career. As I was leaving, Ethan approached me, guilt written all over his face. Sincere, I'm really sorry about everything. Last time it was truly just a coincidence running into Victoria. She was in a bad mood, so I took her to the beach to relax. I glanced at him and continued packing. Man, there's no need for this. Really, you don't owe me an apology. Victoria should be the one apologizing to you. Ethan didn't understand Victoria, but I did. She was someone who was obsessive about emotional loyalty, and I never doubted her faithfulness. I knew she got close to Ethan just to make me jealous, to force me to come looking for her. Only she would use a tactic like that on me. In the past, during one of our Cold Wars, I tried to make her jealous as well. I thought it might stop her from being so unreasonable, make her more mature, less selfish. But it didn't work. Victoria threw all my belongings out the door, completely cutting me off and even instructing her friends to block me on social media. That's when I realized it was all pointless. She would never change. If I retreated one step, she would retreat 100. Between us, someone had to hold on tightly, to keep chasing and never let go. That person had always been me. After moving to San Francisco, I made new friends. On weekends and holidays, we'd go hiking or skiing. I couldn't recall the last time I had this much fun. I used to be outgoing and confident, always an active participant in school events, but later, Victoria hid my passport and ID. She frowned disapprovingly and said, "Sincere, can you stop running around like a monkey? Show some responsibility. Act like a man. You're not a kid anymore. Why are you still obsessed with these meaningless things? Why don't you spend more time with me instead?" My friends tried to reason with me. "Come on, you know how she is. She doesn't mean it. She's worried about your safety, scared something bad might happen to you. If she didn't love you, she wouldn't care at all." I was convinced. I quit all my groups and gave up extreme sports, but now, as I skied down the slopes, feeling the breeze brush against my face and watching the sunset, my friends cheered, "Sincere, you're amazing. This is pro level. You could totally be an athlete." We laughed, teased each other, and bonded over silly banter. Even when there were disagreements, a shared meal would smooth everything over, and we'd be back to laughing and joking. Everyone was honest about what they wanted, and it had been so long since I'd felt this appreciated, this relaxed. I smiled and exhaled deeply, letting go of the weight in my heart. I never expected to see Victoria again. She was standing alone at the entrance of my apartment complex, her face pale from the cold. I didn't know how long she'd been there. The moment she saw me, her eyes lit up, and she walked quickly toward me, only to slow down as she got closer. She noticed the snowboard on my back and immediately frowned. "I've told you so many times, stop skiing," she snapped. "Do you know how many people get injured every year doing that? Do you want to end up in a wheelchair, relying on others to take care of you like some useless person? Is this what you do the moment I'm not around to keep an eye on you?" Before I could react, she grabbed my snowboard and in one swift motion, smashed it to the ground. The board cracked, and people passing by stopped to stare. Perhaps her behavior was too outrageous because a bystander came over, holding up his phone. "Hey buddy, is this one of those scams? Need some help? I've recorded everything as evidence." Something in his words must have struck a nerve because Victoria suddenly screamed hysterically, "What's it to you? Who do you think you are, sticking your nose where it doesn't belong? Get lost." She stormed over, raising her hand to slap him, but I quickly grabbed her wrist and pushed her away. I shook my head apologetically at the man. "Thank you, but I've got this," I said calmly. I pulled out my phone and looked at Victoria, my voice steady. "I've already called the police, Victoria. You're the one who's acting crazy." At the police station, Victoria and I sat across from each other in silence. Neither of us spoke first. A staff member, smiling kindly, tried to mediate. "You two are just a couple having a fight, right? No need to involve the police. Go home and talk it out." Then he turned to me. "And you, young man, don't argue with your girlfriend. Just make her happy." What's the point of fighting with a lady? I was speechless. I interrupted the staff member mid-sentence. First of all, whether someone is in a relationship or not, no one is obligated to appease the other. Gender doesn't change the nature of behavior either. As the party whose rights were violated, I have the right to either pursue the matter or let it go. That's entirely up to me. Furthermore, we are not a couple, nor is this a domestic matter. I am reporting this as an ordinary citizen, accusing her of damaging my personal property. I just don't understand why some people are so obsessed with smoothing things over. Why do all conflicts and disputes, as long as they involve family or romantic relationships, get brushed off as domestic issues? Is a family some kind of lawless zone? What logic do they use to conclude that if a girlfriend is upset, the boyfriend must comfort her and cannot hold her accountable? If that's the case, what's the point of having laws at all? The staff member's face turned awkward at my words, and eventually they stopped joking and began handling the case by the book. Victoria paid the fine, compensated me for my financial loss, and finally wrote a statement of promise. Before leaving the police station, she sincerely and earnestly apologized to the staff, saying, I'm sorry, officer. I promise I'll never do this again. I watched her coldly. That's just the kind of person Victoria is. It's not that she can't apologize. She's always very polite and well-behaved around others. But with me, even lowering her head feels like too much of a grievance. It's ironic how the people closest to her end up being the ones she hurts the most. I quickened my pace, but Victoria wasn't ready to give up. She chased after me persistently and asked, "Sincere, can we talk?" Without stopping, I replied, "We can talk, but after this, don't appear in front of me again." "Deal." Victoria paused for a moment before saying, "Deal." We found a nearby cafe and went inside. I ordered an iced Americano. Victoria, dissatisfied, immediately remarked, "Do you even know what season it is? Don't you remember that I never drink iced Americanos in winter?" I glared at her coldly and she froze. I ordered it for myself. "What does it have to do with you? If you want something, order it yourself," I said. She pressed her lips together and said nothing more. After sitting down, I got straight to the point. "So, what do you want to talk about?" Victoria tucked her hair behind her ear, trying to compose herself and appear calm. "I've thought a lot since I got back," she began. "Everything you said was right. I just didn't want to admit it. I've been too difficult, too self-centered, and unwilling to communicate with you. I can change all of that." She looked at me cautiously, saying, "Sincere, I'll try my best to change. Please don't break up with me." I had waited 7 years to hear these words from her. But now, it was too late. "No," I said. Victoria's eyes instantly filled with panic, as though she had realized something. She looked at me with a mix of grievance and desperation, then revealed her arm. On it was a scar, the evidence of her giving up her dream for me, a scar that had become her greatest leverage and ultimate weapon. Every time she showed it and shed some tears, I would be left speechless and start to compromise. But not this time. After a long silence, I finally spoke softly. "Victoria, even without that scar, you wouldn't have become a doctor, would you?" I had only recently discovered that Victoria had hemophobia. Whether or not she had that scar, she was never destined to be a doctor. And yet, she had kept this from me, never letting me know. I sighed and said, "Do you have any idea how exhausting it is to carry someone else's dreams? Because of me, Victoria couldn't become a doctor, and that put her on some kind of moral high ground. Everyone expected me to tolerate her, to accommodate her. Out of guilt, I endured all her bad temper. Any time I doubted our relationship, someone would bring up her sacrifice and criticize me. People would say, 'She gave up so much for you. Isn't it only right for you to give in to her?' Over time, even I began to unconsciously believe that I owed her endless forbearance." Victoria's voice grew anxious. "You know my family is a mess. My parents don't love me. You're my first love. I've never loved anyone before, and I don't know how to love." I exhaled deeply and said, "You can learn if you don't know. You can change if you've made mistakes. But you lied to me, deceived me, and played me like a fool. Victoria, do you think I'm stupid? Or do you think I have no self-respect and can be toyed with? Victoria quickly retorted, no. She looked up and I could almost see the tears welling in her eyes. In a small voice, she said, I'm just insecure. It was her insecurity that made her sensitive, her insecurity that made her difficult. It was her lack of love that left her incapable of loving others, her fear of abandonment that made her cling to me through guilt. But I said that's just an excuse. Insecurity might explain her sensitivity, but it didn't justify her refusal to change. Why should her insecurity be a reason to torment others? Why should others bear the consequences of her insecurity? She was selfish and emotionally detached, fully aware of her actions yet unwilling to change. I echoed her own words back to her. Victoria, it's because you didn't love me enough. After that day, I truly never saw Victoria again. It was as if she had kept her promise and disappeared from my life for good. I carried on with my routine, focusing on work and participating in various competitions in my spare time. During one marathon, a blonde runner, seeing that I was about to overtake him, deliberately tried to pull me back. I wasn't about to let him get away with that. I directly approached the referee and got his match disqualified. Unexpectedly, he held a grudge and decided to teach me a lesson by speeding toward me on his motorcycle. As I was walking home, I suddenly heard the roar of an engine behind me. By the time I realized what was happening, the motorcycle was already dangerously close. But in the next moment, a pair of hands shoved me out of the way. A muffled groan followed. It had been a long time since I last saw Victoria, and there she was. After pushing me away, her arm was struck and fractured by the motorcycle. Noticing that I was staring at her, Victoria turned her head away. Beads of cold sweat formed on her forehead from the pain. She looked at me pitifully and said, "Please forgive me, won't you?" At the hospital, the doctor was treating Victoria while I stood by. After everyone had left, I told her, "I've already reported this to the police. They'll contact you soon. Your medical bills and other damages will be compensated." I placed the fruit basket I had brought on the table and prepared to leave. "Wait," Victoria called out to me. "What about you?" She hesitated before continuing, "I've done so much for you. Don't you have anything else to say to me?" I paused, my voice turning cold as I replied, "Are you trying to guilt-trip me again? Is this another manipulation tactic? Victoria, haven't you caused enough trouble?" Her face turned pale in an instant. Panicking, she said, "Sincere, that's not what I meant. I just wanted you to talk with me, spend a little time with me." I exhaled slowly and nodded, saying, "All right then." My calmness seemed to sting Victoria. She stared at me for a long time, her voice filled with sorrow as she asked, "Sincere, is this how you see me now? Am I so worthless in your eyes?" I didn't answer, but my silence spoke volumes. The truth was, everything that had happened left a mark. Victoria's years of deceit and manipulation had shattered my trust in her. Outwardly, everything seemed fine, but deep down, I questioned every action she took, suspecting it was another one of her schemes. Once a crack forms in a relationship, it can never truly be mended. Trust, once broken, is irreparable. The hallway outside bustled with noise, yet the hospital room was eerily quiet, as though existing in a different world. Victoria took a deep breath and said, "Sincere, I only came this time to say goodbye. I've always had an inkling that there's something wrong with my personality, but I've been in denial, unwilling to face it. Next month, I'll be transferred abroad. While I'm there, I'll see a therapist and seriously work on my issues. I'll try to fix those flaws." Her body trembled slightly, and tears streamed down her face uncontrollably. She struggled to calm herself but failed repeatedly. Looking at me, her eyes brimmed with hope, childlike in their stubbornness. "Sincere," she said, "if I really change, if I stop being so selfish and difficult, would you give me another chance?" I can't quite describe how I felt at that moment. Once, I firmly believed that two people who loved each other would never drift apart. I used to dream of a forever with Victoria. No betrayals, no infidelity, no interference. But in the end, We still fell apart because love can be exhausted. On this otherwise ordinary day, Victoria asked me if I was willing to give her another chance. I heard myself saying no, let it go. Mutual effort is one of the hardest things in the world. When I was chasing after Victoria, she never looked back. And now that she's coming after me, I've already accumulated enough disappointment to decisively walk away. My past feelings for her were real, but so is the fact that I no longer love her. So let's end it here. Outside the hospital, I ran into some of Victoria's friends who had come to visit her. They looked uncomfortable upon seeing me. I gave them a curt nod, intending to leave, but one of them stopped me. Her closest friend hesitated a moment before stepping forward and asking, "Sincere, why did you delete all of our contacts?" I replied. "Victoria and I have broken up." The girl protested, "You broke up with her, but we can still be friends, can't we?" The others chimed in, voicing their complaints and a hint of indignation. When they saw I wasn't responding, they finally quieted down. I spoke, my voice calm. "Friends? Is that what you call it? Why is it that every time Victoria and I had an argument, you all would come to me, telling me to apologize, to make up with her no matter who was right or wrong? You told me to just placate her and everything would be fine." The girl froze for a moment before softly asking, "Wasn't that for the sake of your relationship? What else could we do? Encourage you to break up? Women are emotional creatures. What's the point of assigning blame?" These people were Victoria's friends, their biases firmly in her favor. They always sided with her, disregarding right or wrong. Their so-called friendship with me was laughable. "There's no need to stay in touch from now on," I said. "It's unnecessary." With that, I turned and left, not bothering to waste any more words. The next time I heard about Victoria was a year later. I was on a business trip to the US and ran into her on the street. She was alone, staring blankly at a stray cat by the roadside. "Sincere," she asked, "how's Tiger doing?" Ever since I took Tiger with me, something changed in him. He went from being aloof to affectionate with me. The scars on my arm from his scratches had faded over time. I replied, "He's doing well. Doing well, and you've gained a little weight." She nodded and said, "That's good." After a few more sentences, the conversation between us fell silent again. I glanced at my watch, not wanting to waste any more time here. I said, "Ms. Victoria, I have something to attend to, so I'll be leaving now." After a polite nod, I put on my coat, ready to leave. Victoria stopped me. She pressed her lips together, attempting to smile. "Sincere," she said. "What do you think of me now?" She even spun around, taking a step back to let me observe her. I thought for a moment and smiled. "You're doing well." The Victoria I once knew was cold and distant, but just now, as she walked past a stall, she naturally picked up a fallen orange. When someone bumped into her, she smiled sweetly and said, "It's okay," instead of showing disdain as she once might have. It seems that therapy has truly worked for her. Victoria hesitated for a moment before saying, "So, I've changed, and I've been thinking about you all this time. Could you?" I interrupted her. "Then I wish you, Ms. Victoria, to keep becoming even better and to meet someone even greater." Victoria's gaze fell, disappointment etched on her face, but I had already turned away, walking into the sunset. The golden rays of the setting sun blanketed the earth, casting a warm glow over everyone. I no longer needed to guess what was on Victoria's mind. She had changed, becoming more willing to express herself, no longer hesitating, and speaking her thoughts openly. But no one stays in the same place forever, waiting. Victoria would grow, become better, but so would I. The withered tree sprouts new leaves. The sun may set, but tomorrow will bring a new dawn. It was only much later that I realized the courage to express oneself is a gift, a rare and precious one. I will strive toward a better future and embrace a better life.